Well, St. Michael's has been many things over its history. It was a builder of ships in the first part of the 19th century, but now it's tourism, and there's nothing wrong with tourism. It's just that St. Michael's is not a typical small town. It's a town of little more than 1,000 full-time residents, but it has changed, not for the worse, but it's changed its economy to be basically tourism-based. And the normal small-town businesses, food stores, grocery stores, a dry cleaning establishment, banks, other things are no longer in St. Michael's. And so the town its economy has shifted to tourism. And of course, that's where this whole story begins, because it still has a lot of homeowners, in addition to a thriving business community. And it has the Maritime Museum, which I call the crown jewel of St. Michael's. So its economy has shifted, and with that has come issues like congestion and noise. What sort of economic development should take place in town? What sort of businesses should be there? One of the big issues with tourism is that while tourism is good, and it's good for businesses, we don't want tourism to overwhelm the town. There have been studies, academic studies, of some towns on the East Coast, like Provincetown, Massachusetts, and Bar Harbor, Maine, that were so filled with tourists that they sort of went off the cliff in terms of the desirability of being there and living there. When you have a town that is filled with tour buses, in the case of Bar Harbor, it's cruise ships, you can become overrun with tourism. So the question is how to control the growth so that the town maintains its historic character, its wonderful historic character of sort of where the land and water meet, and the vibrancy of its business community, along with being a nice place to have a home and live. There's no turning back from tourism, at least for the time being. I think the question is how you achieve a balance in a town, and that gets to this issue of taxation. Well, the Maritime Museum is a major tourist draw in St. Michael's. It has over 80,000 visitors a year, and that raises, demands on the town and its infrastructure. And that's really what we've been looking at. The museum should be a leader in the town in terms of its future. And I think most of the residents that belong to our little association that we formed feel that the museum has let the town down. According to our information, there isn't a single full-time resident of the town on its board, which we think is short-sighted. And we don't see thought leadership about the future of the town coming from the museum. The town is going to be rewriting its future development plan next year. We don't see them consulting anyone in the town about what they do, especially their financial role. And the museum's leadership has taken positions in favor of certain business development, which we thought was antithetical to the interest of the town. For example, there was a motel that was going to be put on town property that was that did not take place for many reasons, but it was largely opposed by the vast majority of residents in the town, and the museum wrote a letter in support of the motel. Why did it have to do that? It's appropriately a tax-exempt organization. It's a 501c3, and thus, but it is also the largest landowner in town. So it pays no taxes. In other words, the town revenue the town budget, which is about $3.5 million a year, not a cent comes from the museum, even though the museum's visitor load is making a lot of demands. The town's police department, its roads, its fire department, its trash removal, all of the infrastructure that supports tourism in the town that the museum is somewhat responsible for. The museum pays no dollars to the town. Now, the museum does many good things in Talbot County. The museum has youth programs. The museum employs people, and that's great. We like that. But the museum does not contribute anything other than it pays a small permit fee, which it strongly resisted paying when they schedule large events at the museum and need a permit from the town. For example, its Sea Glass Festival, it pays $1,000 for a permit. That's it. They pay no property tax. Right. The town's revenue, and we can talk more about this, is from property taxes. And so they are exempt from paying property taxes under law. For example, the museum just acquired this harbor cruise boat called the Patriot. And that's fine. But the fact is the Patriot is a commercial operation, and it did pay a business like the Patriot paid the Talbot County amusement and lodging tax. And that's paid to Talbot County, but Talbot County remits a good chunk of that lodging and amusement tax back to the town. In fact, the town derives 27% of its revenue from the Talbot County lodging and amusement tax. Mm-hmm. But when the Patriot was purchased, the town lost $50,000 a year in revenue from that boat, from that vessel. And the museum recently is acquiring the Crab Claw restaurant. Now, the museum says that restaurant will continue to pay a property tax for like 2 years, but after that, its tax status is uncertain. Well, no one thinks, that the museum will pay a property tax. If you look at what charitable institutions do in towns, and the best examples are colleges, the towns negotiate voluntary payments from these institutions, and these are called pilots, which is an acronym standing for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. There's recently an article in the Journal of Philanthropy about negotiations between Cornell and Ithaca on their pilot. The museum does not, any payment to the town of St. Micheals would be on a voluntary basis. And the museum has not offered to pay a pilot. The residents feel that the town and the commissioners should approach the museum and discuss a voluntary yearly payment. St. Micheals has a police department that is much larger than is needed for a town of its size. Why? Because of tourism. The police account for 35% of the budget of the town. And the police protect the property and the residents and businesses. And so this large expense, we think the museum should have some financial skin in the game, and it should step forward as part of its civic and moral responsibility to make some sort of payment to the town. Well, the museum has a significant staff, and I'm sure that they are like any charity, have demands on their budgets, but they raise a lot of money, and they have these events that raise funds, such as these festivals, these sea glass festivals. They have other types of events. They have a business with weddings, where people have weddings on their property and pay them for the privilege of doing that. So they have many types of activities that generate income. And they have their admissions. But, we're not talking about millions of dollars that the town wants from the museum. We're talking about, a yearly pilot that would show that they are participating in defraying costs for the infrastructure of the town. As far as the tax issue, Dave, I'll just say one thing, is that as important as the museum is, the tax fairness issue is bigger than the museum. It has to do with the relationship between the business community and the town, and the burden sharing. I don't want your readers to think, or your viewers to think, that this is about the museum, because whatever the museum would contribute to the town is not huge. But there's a bigger issue in town, and that has to do with the role of the business community and the property tax base. We're just beginning to have some informal discussions with the museum's board members. I don't know whether the museum, based on its past and its resistance to paying permit fees, strong resistance, I think it's going to be difficult. I think the museum is probably not open to this. But the bigger question, the residents, in bringing up this information about taxes and the museum and the business community and their role, we're not proposing solutions as such.
You just want to talk about it.
Well, we want the people who need to propose solutions are the town commissioners. The residents don't have the expertise. But the town does. The town has a legal advisor. The town has access to the state of Maryland in terms of the municipal league and what other towns do. Let me just say one quick thing about the business community. The business community, the only tax that they pay to the town is the property tax. And so there are only 81 business structures paying the property tax. And they say they pay the same property tax as the residents, even though a business structure produces income as opposed to a house. So we're all paying.
The house goes up, but
yeah, but the house does not produce income like a business does on Talbot Street, and thus it's the residents who are paying the largest share of the infrastructure costs, the police, and other. Even building comfort stations in town for tourists, which is an important thing. The residents are footing the bills on this. And the residents of St. Michael's pay the highest property tax rate in Talbot County. St. Michael's is also unusual, is that the businesses only pay a property tax. There are no business license fees. There are no business property taxes. In some communities, there are businesses pay a percentage of their gross, a small percentage of their gross every year as a tax. There's none of that in St. Michael's. The town is going to have to, I know the commissioners are very interested in this issue as brought forth by the residents, so that the town is going to have to figure out what it does if it wants more revenue.